So, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm now glad to invite the panelists to come to the stage. First of all, I want to invite Marina Petrovic from the UNDP Alternative Finance Lab on the stage, please. Marina. So please have a seat. The panelists will introduce themselves when all on the stage. Then Florian Gamarov, CEO of SandB, and Ban Ki-moon from South Africa. And last but not least, Dr. Sebastian Groh, Managing Director of Soulshare Bangladesh.
In Washington, we were in the same conference. I remember his name, Hashish. Yeah.
So maybe first, before we start with the intro of the panelists, I want to shortly narrow down the term energy excess, that everyone knows what we're precisely talking about. So as per the latest numbers of the International Energy Agency, at least 1.1 billion have no access to electricity, and around 2.8 billion have no access to clean cooking energy. If we consider the people who are having no stable access to grid, I think we have to add the same amount on top. So ensuring access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy until 2030 is put together by the United Nations as the Sustainable Development Goal number 7. So now in the session we have the very interesting leading question: how can we get there by 2030? And how can blockchain help us to get there? So first I want to ask Florian, as he's our blockchain native in the panel, to ask how can blockchain help to eradicate energy poverty? Maybe you can start with a short introduction, please.
Sure. So I'm based in South Africa, and I've been working in blockchain for several years as an advisor to government and large financial institutions, and got involved in the energy space a couple of years ago. And one of the issues that we found was that when it comes to energy access, what the utilities are doing across Africa, in fact, they are rolling out prepaid metering systems. That's because it's very difficult in Africa, once you've actually supplied energy to your customer, to then recover the costs. So many of the utilities are underfunded and they're not being able to recover the costs. So by rolling out prepaid metering, they feel that that's going to solve at least that problem. But in doing that, what we've seen is that they've now exposed a new sort of problem where Africans who don't have access to traditional banking services, much like we do here in Europe, are now find it difficult to actually purchase that prepaid energy. So being involved with Bitcoin since 2010, it was always very clear that cryptocurrency is something that can add a lot of value to the continent. Because obviously, the World Bank says 80% of Africans are unbanked. That means they're really locked out of the digital payment sector and don't have access to the sorts of things that I think here in Europe we take for granted. So at that stage, I thought, well, cryptocurrency, here's a solution. Why don't we create payment methods for Africans who now can easily access cryptocurrency because the barrier to entry is low, and we've seen how mobile growth is quite massive in Africa. Let's create digital cryptocurrency payment methods so that they can actually purchase the energy, and that's when I founded Ban Ki-moon to specifically deal with that problem. But then there's that chicken and the egg problem where, okay, fine, you can build all these technologies which allow people to use crypto for these services, but then the problem is, how do they get it? And as we all know, if you hold cryptocurrency, it's very complicated. There's all these things like private keys and addresses and so on. So I founded then, about a year and a half ago, a company called SandB, and SandB is all about trying to now make cryptocurrency very accessible to Africans. And that means now that they can easily purchase cryptocurrency with cash over-the-counter retailers, and they can make payments for these sorts of services. So we think that by first starting with allowing Africans to access cryptocurrency. We can then provide all these other services like energy access, payments for utilities, but also payments for all sorts of other things, rent and groceries and so on. So a lot of focus is, of course, on this blockchain notion, this sort of this trustless sort of system. But actually, in my mind, and I guess it's been a cliche for a long time in Africa, really the real value that we see in blockchain is actually cryptocurrencies. There is a problem with money in Africa. A lot of Africans don't trust their financial system. We saw how in Zimbabwe, I am Zimbabwean, the currency collapsed. So, cryptocurrency to us is a greatly underappreciated aspect of blockchain, and it makes so much sense in Africa. Africans love it. In fact, South Africa is consistently the #1 country in the world, if you look at Google Trends, for interest in Bitcoin. So we focus very much on that.
Thank you very much, Lorian, for this very interesting insight. I certainly like to come back to one or the other point.
Sure.
But first, I want to pass the word to Sebastian. When you're really pioneering innovative solutions to alleviate energy poverty on the ground in Bangladesh. So I'm keen to hear from you, which opportunities you see with blockchain technologies actually in your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks a lot, Timon. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I think I want to first show a little bit what are the realities on the ground when we talk about energy access, what it means to us. I guess everybody here in the room has a mobile phone, and so by now everybody has in Bangladesh, be it in the urban or be it in the rural areas. The question is, if you don't have access to electricity, what do you do when your battery runs low? So not having access to electricity doesn't mean that this part of the world is living in darkness. They are very creative in coming up with very innovative solutions themselves. And the problem is it often comes at a cost. So when we looked at Bangladesh as a market, we found a couple of amazing things. First, there are 5 million solar home systems. A solar home system is a system which consists of a PV panel, a battery, and a charge controller, and then you have your appliances where you can charge your phone, you can have a light bulb, we can watch TV, have a fridge even nowadays. 5 million of them, that means 25 million people have solar as a primary energy source. In Germany, we would love to have that. In any country of the world, we would love to have that. It's the biggest distributed energy solar utility in the world, and hardly anybody knows about it. So what we found is a couple of things. First of all, the people who do not have a solar home system, which is another 50 million, they have to give away their phones to someone who has, and then he or she charges him or her $10. If we convert this means they are paying $10 a kilowatt hour. At the same time, all these systems are designed in a way that they produce excess capacity because the battery cannot store everything, and because of the seasons, you can't change the design. So every day we have 600,000 kilowatt hours which are wasted, which are excess capacity. That is 100 times driving with a Tesla Model S around the world. That's the amount of electricity which is wasted every day. So at SolShare, what we came up with, we added these two things together, $10 a kilowatt hour, 600,000 kilowatt hours a day, and said, let's build a platform, and that's now a term probably everybody understands here, peer-to-peer, of solar home systems. So we interconnect those people that they can trade electricity, swap electricity. Whenever you need more power, you buy it. Whenever you need less, you sell it. And this kind of a trading platform, this solar peer-to-peer grid, was, at least to my knowledge, the first cyber-physical solar peer-to-peer grid in the world, but in a fairly, I would argue, unexpected place, in a remote village in Bangladesh. So that's how SolShare came first into the media. Different grids followed up. And a small disclaimer. The whole media was like saying, oh yeah, SolShare coming out from Bangladesh is the avant-garde of blockchain. The disclaimer is that's not quite right. Avant-garde maybe in some senses, in some less, but we're not actively using blockchain. We have distributed assets in terms of batteries and generation. We have distributed billing. Bangladesh, for those of you who don't know, also have the biggest mobile money platform in the world. They have surpassed M-Pesa from East Africa by now. So distributed billing is in place. Every meter we have in the houses is an IoT device. It can run completely peer-to-peer, so there's no centralized structure. So the whole philosophy of blockchain, we are completely in line with. But that we work on the protocol, we found several hindrances, and we can discuss them, why we didn't embrace it yet. We have a proof of concept going on together with Freelio and the Energy Web Foundation for what we call a conditional energy token for a donation platform. You can imagine it like this. You are in your house in Europe or in the US, and for some reasons you maybe save €5 or $5 on your monthly electricity bill. We have the power now through this token to bring these €5 from your meter, which you saved, this money which saved, onto a meter in Bangladesh, one-to-one. And you can even see through the token with an interface what this person in Bangladesh is using this power for. It can power a solar rickshaw there, it can power a light, a TV, whatever you want. So this is something which is going on, and for us it's kind of a dipping the toe into the sea of blockchain, which really it seems to be with infinite opportunities. But of course, it will open the gates towards that we can run our entire grids on the blockchain, which may make them much more trustworthy, even though we don't have a trust issue yet in our villages. But let's wait till we scale up, go to other countries. It may make the whole trading peer-to-peer a lot more efficient.
Thank you very much. Very insightful, and I think cutting edge what you're doing there in Bangladesh. Now to Marina. Marina, as an expert from the UNDP Alternative Finance Lab, you're having an overview, especially with regards to financing on SDGs, UN SDGs. Can you please give us a short background how blockchain can help to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal number 7? And please introduce yourself. That would be nice.
So first to say, I'd like to say a big thank you to the organizers. This is a really amazing event with such amazing companies and people. Just hearing the stories and sharing the experience is, I think, a huge thing. So I'm working for the UNDP, where two of my colleagues and I started something that's called Alternative Finance Lab. For the first time, UNDP has its own so-called startup, because we understand we are working in this very complex environment. That's why we also need to be like a little bit more adjusted to this kind of ever-changing things around us. We are working mostly with different innovative technological solutions and with financial solutions for now more than 6 years, starting with the crowd investment, preventative finance, predictive finance, and also different innovative technological solutions, blockchain and artificial intelligence, virtuality, and so on. So basically, we are acting as a platform. I don't know how many of you know, but UNDP actually works with the government. So we are connecting the platforms, the solutions that are already on the ground with the governments. That's why we also became very interested in blockchain 3 years ago, because we saw in the blockchain, not like a blockchain, but some kind of innovation, the technology that can maybe help us to upscale our work and maybe help us to achieve better results. So how we are usually working? We are usually working to go directly to the bottlenecks. So we are trying to move away from the hype. We are working out of the radar. That's why I assume like maybe 1% of you have heard about us. So far, we have around 7 projects on the ground rolling out, and these are like huge projects. For example, in Lebanon with refugees, in Serbia. So we have like financial and non-financial. Also, we became very much interested in renewable energies, because one part of the partner is like low carbon development. And of course, this is very related to the SDGs, as I assume some of you know that there are 19 SDG goals. And I think for me, one of the most interesting is 16.9, which is like a basic human right to have the identity. And I think in the blockchain, whatever like application you're trying to develop, the first thing is to have this digital ID. Also, digital ID relates to, we call it like this invisible people, like 1.1 billion people that are invisible. Of course, if we can, like, for example, give them the digital ID, then we can also connect them with different platforms for the trading, for the electricity, give them digital wallets. Those people can find a job. So there's like a lot of opportunities for the connection between the SDGs and blockchain. They're like, we are trying to like end world hunger, or working on the climate change. So numerous possibilities, if I can say like this. But what we are trying to do, we are trying to be very concrete. Because when you're working in this environment, you meet a lot of people, a lot of companies, and one thing is to actually go on the ground, and do this some kind of perpetual research and development, go back and forth, communicate with the government, develop your solution. And one thing is just to go above and think, okay, I have this perfect solution, it could fit, because we're still working with different country contexts, environments, policies, regulations. So I think definitely blockchain as a technology, as the innovation, could help us to upscale our work. But I don't want to be totally open and saying, yes, it can help us to end world hunger, it can help us to become better people, to act better towards the environment, towards ourselves. So as a tool, yes, I think it could be a perfect some kind of addition.
Thank you very much, Marina. Maybe Lorianne, question to you. So we learned that you're already working on a digital finance platform for African countries based on blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Is there anything you can offer to Sebastian to accelerate? I mean, combining what you're working on.
Put me in prison, please.
Just as a direct question, to understand how blockchain may speed up fighting against the energy poverty.
Yes, so having been consulting and advising to enterprises and government and non-government organizations on blockchain specifically, I've become a little bit more conservative about the potential that blockchain has in all these different industries. I think that it is an interesting technology, but yet very often the cliche is that we're trying to find the problem that it solves. And we are seeing, we're missing what I think is the immediate benefit from blockchain. And again, it comes down to the cryptocurrency, because of course we have many cryptocurrencies and they're all evolving, but it's the one thing that we can look at that really does right now provide value in the world. Of course, I mean, there's still volatility, and there's still debates about how to scale these things. But in terms of the economics and also the accessibility as a technology, and given all the financial problems that the world is facing, especially in Africa, I think that if we look at cryptocurrencies, and think to ourselves, how can we incorporate a cryptocurrency into our business model, then I think you'll be able to find value much sooner than you will if you now try and explore all these blockchain opportunities. I mean, for literally years now, I've been building POCs and things on blockchain, and we always reach a sort of the same point where we think, why are we using a blockchain? We might as well just use existing technologies. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I always say that we're missing the Bitcoin wood for the blockchain trees. Bitcoin certainly is. It's strange, as far as money is concerned, and also it lives in this regulatory gray zone. So people are unsure whether or not regulators will ever allow it to exist. But it certainly is something that works. So, in the spirit of regulation following innovation, I think that if you have a problem right now and you're desperately trying to solve it with blockchain, it could be many years, at best, to find that solution. But if you look at cryptocurrency and you say, all right, well, here we have a novel form of money, that's very frictionless. You can move money across border, and you can do it without having a bank. I think that's where you're going to find value today, and that's what we found, because we built our energy payment system in 2014, and and that was usable. We did a pilot with Ed Hesser, and it just showed you that there was a problem, and it was solved with cryptocurrency, and that's now, it exists. People can use it. So the only advice I can say is that, yes, of course, if you have the budget and you have the luxury of being able to explore these things and build a team, yes, but don't miss out on the opportunity that cryptocurrency has, because that is a really revolutionary thing that works. It's here. It's not like we have to debate whether or not cryptocurrency will ever be a thing. So that's the only thing I think I can give in all these years of advice. Don't push cryptocurrency to the side and think that the real opportunity lies elsewhere, because you're going to miss a lot of opportunity in that space.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to respond directly? Or?
Yeah, before he answered, I was kind of whispering to him, don't put me in prison, please, because I don't want to spoil the party, but unfortunately, Bangladesh is among the very few countries where cryptocurrencies are illegal, to the extent that you face 7 years imprisonment, and the police even hunts down people having a Bitcoin in their houses. So I guess we don't want to miss out, but we would like to miss out the prison time, definitely. The good news is we managed to bring the power minister this week here to Berlin to the energy transition dialogue, and of course we put him on the blockchain panel and put him a little bit on the spot, and he sounded optimistic. He was really, really happy to hear what's happening, and promised to come back to us and see what can be done. Elections are coming up, so probably nothing happening in the short term, but hopefully in the medium term. So that much on the cryptocurrency side. Of course, we are trying to find ways, and we have very good partners to see how we can go around this by having this token conditional energy token, whether we can find ways how to get around this. But it requires some creativity, it requires piloting and seeing what's possible.
Great, thank you. And then a question to you. So we heard, let's say, on the short term, the opportunities to speed up the energy topic itself are maybe limited. Regulatory hurdles are an issue, maybe. But what about the broader view on the finance system? For example, if we look on the project X from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I don't know if you're aware of that. I mean, one of the issues, we're talking about mainly developing and emerging countries here when we talk about energy poverty, and it is not only the case that the people don't have access to electricity, they are as well not having access to the banking system, and most probably this won't change fast because it's not too attractive for the banks. So a mode of payment which is used very often is mobile payment, yes. And you have a lot of different standards worldwide, more than 260 different mobile payment standards. And the Gates Foundation took it up and said, we want to create one digital financial service roof platform where we get interchangeability of these mobile payment platforms. Plus they will create bankable background data of the people. Financing off-grid systems or mini-grids, very often it's an issue that the off-takers are not bankable. But if we get payment histories through such a system, that would be maybe helpful in financing. What is your opinion in that point of view?
Yeah, okay, definitely I agree with you. And I also think, like, for example, when you're working in Africa, because I'm also working in some of the countries. So I think, like, first to go a few steps back, before you're developing any kind of blockchain solution, the first thing you need to ask yourself, is this maybe the logical, the first step? Do we really need to have the blockchain here? And then, see, okay, what are the other alternatives on the market? So, for example, of course, in Africa, we have this M-Pesa, M-Changa, whatever. So, for some of these solutions, for example, for payments, there is no need for the blockchain, to be honest. It's very simple usage of SMS, so it can, be connected through the peer-to-peer energy trading, so kind of platforms. So, I'm not sure how well, maybe, the blockchain could be some kind of more marketing layer than real, additional nodes. But definitely, I think it can speed up the process, but, it doesn't have to be totally directly connected, because, for example, you have this amazing initiative. We have this Sun Exchange, Solar Coin. So, it's not directly connected with the end users, but, for example, when we have Sun Exchange, who is set up in these platforms, putting the PVs on the schools and connects this through with the blockchain, with payments, with bitcoins, with the investors from our side, then we're, in some way affecting, the end user, which are the people from the Africa, their economy, so, end poverty and these things. So, there are different ways how we can really maybe help them to become more resilient, which is of course also one of the UNDP's some kind of end goals. SolarCoin also through this, through their these different actions that they are doing, just upscaling. I'm trying also to figure out, to be honest for myself, where the blockchain is really needed, where not. Because if we're trying all the time to push forward blockchain, I think we'll be lost in the end. And if we can look at the blockchain as a person, as a child that has only 8 years, then it's very hard to expect that the 8-year-old child, will be able to solve these huge incremental, problems. So.
I see. Thank you very much. And Lauren, I have one question to your activities in Africa. Talking about developing or emerging countries, I mean, we have a huge difference in terms of the IT infrastructure, computing power, which is there, and most of the people having no access to electricity will, in the best case, have a mobile phone, but normally no desktop computer or similar. So how do you deal with that hurdle, I can imagine, in your project, your company?
Well, I guess you mentioned the Sun Exchange, and there's an example of how we can create these microgrids and then have foreign investors being able to earn a return from their customers through cryptocurrency. So again, it always, a solution always comes down to the payments. Payments is always such a kind of spanner often in these situations. So I think that by providing these sorts of payment systems, then it is quite possible for people to be able to implement these kind of microgrids or these renewable solutions and then earn some kind of return and then not be hindered by the payment mechanism. So, obviously in Africa, there's a lot of rural communities, they aren't electrified, but there's a lot of sun. So, we look forward to a world where PV becomes cheap enough, but also where foreign investors perhaps can look at Africa and say, look, there's a real great opportunity. And the problem that we have where, earning our return is difficult, well, maybe here we have an opportunity where we can actually have customers now onboarded with cryptocurrency and then being able to make payments for that energy going through to an investor who's now funded the CapEx of the installation. So Sun Exchange is a great example, and I'm convinced that those sorts of solutions are going to become a lot more accessible as soon as the Africans who are consuming that energy are able to pay for it in a seamless way. So, I feel like, again, I guess you'll always, every time I speak, I'll always be talking about the payments aspect of a blockchain. But that's because it really does unlock a lot of potential that is latent within Africa. People do have money. It's not that but they don't necessarily have access to a reliable payment system. And also, as I said before, they tend to mistrust their financial platforms, financial institutions. So that to me is a great opportunity. As soon as we can make cryptocurrency products that are accessible throughout the world, then it's going to unlock all this potential where now customers can actually purchase those. So that to me is great. And also, we've been working very closely with our regulators and our internal revenue services, our central banks, and what we've been able to do with them, because you can imagine how a central bank must feel about a cryptocurrency. As soon as somebody lives and works and earns their salary and pays their rent and pays their groceries in crypto, you can imagine how a central bank might find that uneasy for them to deal with. But what we've been able to now achieve within sub-Saharan Africa is that we've gone to the regulators and said, look, yes, of course, crypto itself is a technology that you can't have access to. But what you can do is you can have visibility on the businesses that are providing value around cryptocurrency. So if you think about exchanges and merchant payment services, we have a merchant payment system. What we've done to our regulators and said, look, we will be the accountable institution. You can audit us. We will know our customers and we will provide AML type information to you. So we will be the place that you govern, and the protocol itself, which is the crypto, yes, that is you'll never have control over that. It's the same sort of thing as the music industry. You know, the music industry, I think, and the movie industry really panicked after Napster, where people can now download movies, and they thought that was the end of that industry. But by legitimizing digital downloads and allowing companies like iTunes and Spotify and that sort of thing to exist, it meant now that the industry could evolve, and we could now have accountable institutions that could be regulated and could provide digital downloads. And that's exactly what's going to happen, I think, with cryptocurrency, where there'll be accountable institutions that provide legitimate value around cryptocurrency, and the vast majority of people will use them. You know, in 2007 or 2008, 70% of the traffic on the internet was BitTorrent, which is digital downloads. Now it's less than 5% because of Netflix and so on. So it's very important when you talk to your regulators to say, look, yes, we'll never be able to regulate Bitcoin, but you can certainly regulate the businesses that provide value around it. And that's been a great positive thing. And that's why our regulators right now are actually very interested in this technology. They see it as a tool of financial inclusion.
Very interesting. So I understand that creating a trustee or creating a currency that can be trustable can be very beneficial for our topic as well. I mean, from investors' point of view, one of the first problems you have is the currency risk. You have unpredictable exchange rates and so on. So how can you invest as a dollar or euro investor in African currencies? So there, I think I see a very, very big opportunity, as I understood. Maybe from the United Nations Development Program side, you see already move in the governments of developing countries encouraging use of cryptocurrencies for this field?
So what I see, because I'm currently working with 40 countries all around the world, and to be honest, I got curious every day, like, you know, from the Central Asia, Africa, Eastern Balkan countries, so they're very interested. And to be honest, like, our approach to them is never speak about cryptocurrencies. So it's like some kind of still very forbidden field, because I think this field is very shady. And we are talking here about very incremental, you know, some kind of infrastructure projects. So just, you know, dealing with the cryptocurrencies can be maybe a big reputational risk for both them and us, because we want to have success stories. If we have success stories, then we can move to, you know, the next step, which is maybe cryptocurrencies. But I think also from our case, we're also now, you know, seeing like a bigger vision in this. For example, we are developing now in Morocco a coin, working in Tajikistan, also creating a Tajikistan Somali dollar for their banks. So there's like some kind of positive, you know, things on the horizon. But still, you know, we're trying to move away from this, because still the cryptocurrencies, for me personally, they're like very good companies. Like we have here Banki and the companies other like, but still shady, because there's ICOs, these things, you know, nobody knows who does that, who is behind that. So I think we will not be able to just, you know, to go through this very fast. We need to first start building very sexy projects, appealing projects with the blockchain, and then slowly maybe introducing and doing these bigger changes, you know, penetrating with very small projects.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much. So considering the time, I would suggest now to switch to the Q&A. So if there are questions from the audience, unfortunately, I don't see questions here. Can you maybe show some of the questions? Exactly, thank you. Let's see what we pick here.
Should I answer that first one?
Start with the first one. Please
Got
take
my name on it.
Yes, please go ahead.
So M-Pesa is a very interesting mobile payment technology. You know, it has created a lot of financial inclusion within Africa, but it suffers from the same problems as any other payment system. First of all, it's locked into the country. That's the first thing, and also it's linked to the local fiat currency. So, you know, again, there's this general feeling, I think, of mistrust of local currencies within the continent. So what cryptocurrency provides is pretty much the same experience as an M-Pesa, but now the ability to very easily move it cross-border. And, you know, Africa, one of the poorest continents on Earth, well, the poorest continent, has the highest costs for moving money cross-border. And there are many millions of Africans, I mean, many millions of Zimbabweans living in South Africa that every month send home a little bit of money, and they have to pay 15–20% cost. So using a cryptocurrency immediately brings value to the person, where they can now move almost 100% of that value back to their families. And also with M-Pesa, there's onboarding issues. You have to have KYC information, know your customer. You have to have an identity, and it's very difficult for migrants and people who, might not necessarily have all that identity information you're talking about it to access M-Pesa. So Bitcoin and those cryptocurrencies, I'm a fan of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, if anyone wants to know. It's very easy to get. You don't need anything. You just need a mobile phone, and suddenly now you can pay your relatives cross-border. You don't have to fill in any forms and so on. So M-Pesa is cool, and it was the gateway, I think, into Africans now very easily being brought into a cryptocurrency world. So I've been very pleased about M-Pesa because it made my job easier, where I didn't have to explain or train or educate my customers to now use Bitcoin. It's the same thing, except with none of the negatives and all the positives of crypto.
Okay, thank you very much, Lauren. In between, I shortly want to take up a very important comment here, that Africa is not a country. Yeah, I think the whole panel is very, very conscious about that. I think it's always important to say, especially if you're in Europe. We're very aware. I mean, especially I'm traveling a lot in Africa. We have an African on the panel. So it's a huge continent with many different countries, many different cultures. So we understand this, and thank you for this comment. So you wanted to take up the...
on international donors, yeah. Whether it could provide transparency. I mean, I gave the example of a European or US electricity user. But of course, if we think about donor money, the first which comes to some of the things which come to our mind is, lack of transparency, and a lot of money get lost in administration and for consultancies and so forth. Of course, this donation platform based on a token could be an incredible powerful tool. I mean, if we connect it to a smart contract, the relationship you normally have, you can translate it into the smart contract, and you could really condition it. Okay, it needs to benefit. I'm just making up examples now, which I see in discussions with donors. It should benefit a rural woman. So you can check rural woman. I don't want them to use it for entertainment, for TV. It should be only for light, for essential needs. Check. Through the meter we have, we can check all those things. And this concept of that it can all happen at the same time, so the money is always released once a new box is installed, once it's confirmed it's a woman, once it's confirmed it's for lighting and so forth. I think it could have an incredible impact on the transparency, but also on the efficiency of any development aid which is flowing into these countries in the energy sector here.
Okay, thank you very much. Marina, is there a question you want to take up?
Yeah, I would like to say maybe not on the third question, because it's not for here discussion. But I can also maybe, I don't know, the second question, because I'm currently working in Somalia, and of course there's a huge problem with the corruption and these issues. Okay, normal thing. But of course, definitely think the blockchain, because we're currently now also exploring there how to maybe implement the blockchain for this kind of diaspora investment projects. But we have also there like a crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, more or less follows the same logic, and it can be even more transparent because you can actually see the person's face, and it provides more data. But blockchain can be like maybe for this bigger infrastructure investors, a very, very good solution. For the third, as I said, I don't want to be involved in commenting this.
Okay. Yes, I mean, there is a question about China. I think maybe we can wait for some other questions, because I think this China question will lead too far now. What you have any experience in the role of utilities? I mean, I think what all you proposed is, I mean, that's a matter of fact for all the blockchain and energy topic, that of course the utilities must be afraid of what is happening as well in developing and emerging countries here. Do you have any opinion or view on how utilities behave on what you're already doing? Are they trying to to get in? Are they protective in the countries you're active?
Well, in our case, where we are working, the utilities, by definition, haven't reached yet, as it is off-grid. What is interesting now, the first grids where we have installed is the grid is coming, and now the interesting question is, what do the people want? Do they want to have the grid? Do you want to have the microgrid? And their answer used to be in the beginning, I want to have the grid because that's the big thing, that's what solves all my problems, and I'm living like a city dweller. Experience has shown that the grid, and that's what you said in your introduction, is so intermittent that exactly when you need the power, it always seems to be off. So they want to have both. And that comes to a next interesting thing. How do we make the two complementary? From a pricing scheme, it's, I guess, very challenging, but also from an infrastructure scheme, that will be very interesting. Is there a net metering policy? It's coming in Bangladesh, but the price at which we are trading within the grids, or the houses are trading, is of course very different than the price of the subsidized national grid. So I think there's a lot of work to do, and it is also kind of an elephant in the room. How grid ready is your grid from a technology perspective, from a policy perspective, from a financial perspective, and how can you interact there? And to come back to the utilities, we are talking to them. It's very interesting, because in a sense, in a developing country, a utility has a mandate, electricity for all. For Bangladesh, that's the Vision 2021, it's the 50 years anniversary. So they have an interest to talk to us because we're doing part of their jobs. The question is it going on to their merit or on our merit? And that's a very political question, given that the elections are coming up. So I think that's a panel altogether for itself, but that much for the utilities in role in Bangladesh.
So it's an interesting topic, somewhere between competition and cooperation. As I understood, Marina, you wanted to take up a question.
Yes, for example, we are now working a study for the Croatian national utility energy company, because I think, at one moment, all these different inquiries from these companies will start to just boom out, because I think they're starting to recognize the importance, because it will be either you're in the game or you're excluded from the game. And I think we can also maybe do a parallel with what happened in the 90s. For example, we had these national telecom companies where, for example, in Croatia, those people thought for the mobile companies, it will probably not come here. It is very fast technology coming from the USA. And in 1.5 years, we had 2 players in Croatia, and these guys were defeated. So I think we can, just relate to this, so kind of our past experience, what happened before in our past, and learn from our past. And just try to give some kind of advices or help our utility companies to become also more resilient and to include people, communities in the exchange, to work together, which I think also it's a very important thing to say for this conference, because we are currently building up a blockchain ecosystem, some kind of framework, where all of these companies together, and my work, you will succeed better if we cooperate together, if we become stronger together. And I think also for the national companies, they need to think like that. Okay. Cooperation.
Great, thank you very much. Now, considering again the time, I would like to ask you for an individual wrap-up. So maybe in a nutshell, what each one of you would say, what are the biggest opportunities using blockchain in the field of energy, eradicating energy poverty? Maybe you can start, Laurie, in a nutshell, please.
Well, again, just to reiterate, I think that the idea of cryptocurrency, I think, is underappreciated. I think that there's many opportunities in that space. I think if we all look at it as a serious thing, then the opportunities will present themselves. Blockchain, very exciting and very interesting, but there's a long way to go. I think that we don't have to worry about missing out if we don't engage with it right now. It might be a good idea if you don't have the resources or the time to wait and see. I don't think that's a problem. But crypto for me is a valuable thing that works today, and we shouldn't underestimate it.
Okay, thank you very much. Marina.
Thank you. So, as I said before, I think we need to move away from the hype. and just go to the bottlenecks, to the exact problems, see whether the blockchain is really needed there. And also, I think we need to collaborate more, collaborate between ourselves, because each of us works, like, for example, these companies in different country contexts, and I think the sharing of experiences, communicating, collaborating will help us all to upscale our work, and maybe just push blockchain forward, I don't know, faster. So, and also in terms of like my personal thing, so our office, we have 170 offices, which are all interested in working and doing something with the blockchain. And currently we are looking for the companies that did actually on the ground, that have successful examples. So, just if you see also some kind of interesting opportunity, just please get back to me today or later. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. No, Sebastian.
Just very briefly, because I saw
Yes.
it, I do agree, the example was a little bit paternalistic, so I apologize for that. It was meant to be an illustration what you can do with the smart contract, but it also means what you can do in terms of switching off devices. If you sell something over credit and somebody doesn't pay his installment for TV, I can also targetedly switch this off until it is paid. So as a means of illustration. To wrap up, I would like to invite anybody interested in solar peer-to-peer and who's not so much interested in trying this in a small regulatory sandbox, but actually trying to scale it within the next couple of months with the thousands, please approach me. We can do that in Bangladesh. We have millions of systems. It's a real game changer. And fortunately, we don't have, we have the cryptocurrency regulations, but fortunately, we don't have the other regulations when it comes to peer-to-peer integration. So very much invite you to do that. And on the cost of the trading, you have to imagine it, the trading happens between the houses. We have standardized it for now, which means we just have a unified price. We're not doing auction modes, we're not doing surge pricing yet, but the price is a multiple of the grid price. The difference is, of course, that we're running on DC, which means the DC appliances consume also only a fraction of the appliances in the AC grid. So if you look at electricity as a service, we're even cheaper, but very few people do that. They only look at kilowatt-hour prices, which again makes very little sense if you consider that we are trading watt-hours and not kilowatt-hours. So you're also not comparing what costs a 10-gram washing powder from Hindustan leather versus a kg price in the town. That's a little bit of a false comparison. Concluding with that, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Marina, you
Last
have
thing,
1 minute left, so
yeah,
please go ahead, add something.
So just to say, yesterday we launched our one of our projects, which is innovative projects in Chisinau, which is the capital city of Moldova. So we actually put solar PVs on the rooftop of the technical university. We will do some kind of very innovative crowdfunding campaign through the Sun Exchange, and we will back up all these projects and our backers with Solar Coin as some kind of thank you reward note.
Okay, thank you
Support
very much.
us.
Then I want to thank the panelists for this very inspiring and thoughtful discussion. And yeah, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, so much for the topic of energy access. Thank you.